Welcome back. This is Muhammad Usman at Programming with XE by X Developers. Let's move to our first chapter of Entity Framework, which is Introduction to Entity Framework. Basically, Entity Framework allows you to create a model by writing code or using boxes and the lines in Entity Framework Designer. You can use this approach to target an existing database or your new database. Entity Framework automatically generates necessary SQL code for you. It's also a map result set to strongly typed objects. If you have a property with the type of integer, you cannot add the string data to this property until you convert it to the integers. It's also implicit support for transactions. Basically, Entity Framework is well known as ORM, which is Object Relational Mapping. For example, if you have an ASP.NET application and you want to save the data in and out from your application to your database, there is a median which you can use as the Entity Framework. It will generate the classes for you like the objects, so you can easily access your database from your application. Now let's talk about the features of Entity Framework. Basically, there are three major approaches to use the Entity Framework in your application. The first one is schema first approach, the second one is model first approach, and the third one known as code first approach. In the schema first approach, you can add the existing database and you can take the tables from database and create the classes from those tables. In the model first approach, if you have an existing database, you have to pass through a wizard like the ADO.NET model. You select the database, add the tables and store procedures, and it will automatically generate classes for you, which means like the getter and setters to access the data in and out from your application to the database. And the last one is code first approach, which is basically, you can say, the Entity Framework 4.1. so now Microsoft provides Entity Framework 6. So basically, in the code first approach, we have to follow a few steps to implement the code first approach in your applications. First of all, there should be an ASP.NET application. Of course, you have to create an ASP.NET application first. And the second step, you are going to create the models. And the third step, you are going to create a context for your database. So let's talk about the second step. In the second step, you can say that we are going to add a models. Here, model means we are going to add or define a classes in the terms of class.cs file, like we add into our application. So for example, there are two classes we are having. The number one is students and the other name is class. So we can say that the class 1, which is the students, have some properties like the integer student ID, the string student name, and the last one is list, which is showing that the relation with the second class, which is named as class. And that class has the class ID and the name. So basically, these are the objects of our each class. These are the objects same you have in your SQL database table. In your SQL database student table, you have two properties. The one is student ID, the second is student name, and the third one you are going to add the class ID, which is basically the property of the class table. But to show the relation, you have to give them a foreign key, you can say that. So these are the two basic classes which are showing the models of the code first approach. You have to add it manually. So the get means getter and the set means setters. These are the basically, you can say, the properties which we use to set or get the data from your database table. The next last thing is you have to create the context. So I just add the class which is named as the student context, and we inherit this with the DB context by using the statement using system.data.entry. Means if you use this statement, you can access that DB context. So in the DB context, I further explain in the next videos, we are going to add the connection string to access the data from your database, SQL database server. So in this class, I just added the database set which explains the both of the classes, which is the first one is student and the next one in class. So let's move to our next video, in which we are going to implement the core for the core first approach. So that's going to be give us a clear idea how we can use the core first approach entity framework feature to access the database from our ASP.NET application. Thank you so much.